the most original talk radio station anywhere. We are LA Talk Radio at latalkradio.com.
You're listening to Fouché Way with Brandon Fouché, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Well, hello, and welcome to the Fouché Way radio show, live every Thursday at 1 o'clock p.m., sponsored by a nonprofit organization called Canine Hope for Improvement Program, where we hope to improve the quality of our dogs' lives by moving towards a no-kill society. The number here is 818-602-4929. Canine Hope for Improvement Program, developed to save the lives of dogs, is an educational nonprofit because that's what it's going to take to solve this problem, education. You know, I made a statement a few shows ago that you can't keep what you don't give away. This means when you have knowledge, you must share it. And I like to think that when I help someone, they will help someone else. So when someone is having an aggressive problem with their dog, such as lunging on a leash, be patient and understanding that they're just trying to get it right. That's why this show is here, to help people to keep their loved ones from being killed. But I do need your help. So if you are enjoying this show, support it in any way you can. One way is to tell a friend. The second is to Facebook us, Twitter us, and give a donation. Start by downloading the seminar from the LA Trade Tech College. That will help. You know, I'm trying to work very closely with volunteers and rescue organizations to help dogs get out of the shelter and stay out. And today we have one of those dogs that we would like to talk about. Her name is Maggie, and her owner's name is Ellie. Ellie, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm happy to have you on because when I have people on like you, I know that it's another life that's being saved. And I'm sure our callers, if they've gone to our Facebook page, they will see your beautiful dog there. And we want to talk about your journey with her. So can you kind of tell us about Maggie, how you came about getting her, and what led you up to the point that brought you here to me?
Yeah, definitely. So about 8 weeks ago today, actually, we adopted Maggie from the West Los Angeles animal shelter. And she was just this really, really cute, pretty small pit mix. And she had 2 different colored eyes and sort of called out to us when we went through looking at the dogs that were there. She was really friendly, but we never saw her interact with another dog at the shelter. But we really just fell in love with her from the moment that we saw her there. And we decided to adopt her without actually seeing her interact with other dogs. Mm-hmm. She had some kennel cough when we first took her home, so she wasn't allowed to be with other dogs right away. And then she had her spay surgery, so she was recovering and wasn't supposed to be around dogs in case they liked and played and stuff. And you know, just for her health issues, just so she would recuperate
right.
fully.
You know, Allie,
so
sometimes, Allie, you know, sometimes what a lot of people don't understand is that when you get a dog from the shelter and they have kennel cough, the energy that the dog would normally be using to show the aggression or the reactivity of the nervous system is compromised because it's used to heal the organ. Okay? And that's why
she was like, she slept the entire week and a half that we that we first got her from the shelter.
Right. And so you can't see who she really is. And
right.
so, yeah, and then once her being spayed, of course, you had to go through that again. And another thing that happens when a dog is going through this physical thing, emotional also, we tend to bond with the dog in a way that it's like a baby that's sick. It's your first baby that's sick. And we do a lot of doting on the dog. And so there's a couple of things happening here. We are imprinting on the dog's mind that we're weak and we embolden the dog to become assertive and dominant. And so when the dog becomes well, then the original dog can come out, but then now it's being compromised because of the learned behavior that it has with you. I just wanted to bring that out to you because we didn't talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. And you could see that, once she started to recuperate, she was obviously very hyper, sometimes running around the house. We live in an apartment, so sometimes she'd run from the bedroom to the living room, which isn't very far, but, she would do it jumping over furniture and just going a little bit crazy, and we just did not know. At first it was like, oh, look at that, she can jump really high, and then it was kind of like, oh my gosh, we have a nut job living in our apartment right now. And I mean, she's been as sweet as can be since the first day that we adopted her. She's very cuddly, but we did so much reading when we first got her, and all of these things kept saying, just you have to tire out the dog, just tire her out, wear her out, then she'll be, they'll be more obedient then, and we could not get her to stop sometimes. And then
that's
once
interesting.
She did recover and everything.
That is interesting because
we noticed.
That is interesting. I wanted to cut you off there. It's interesting because the books that you're reading that say tire her out, the very thing that is being annoying you, jumping over furniture, flipping around the house. I mean, in some way we believe, okay, this dog is playing, is having a wonderful time. We would like to interfere with that and participate in it. And we kind of promote this type of behavior. And then when we hear that, okay, tire them out, then we feel more obligated to become involved with these activities, not knowing that we are creating a monster. We're feeding it.
So she became quite we didn't call her a monster, but she was running around and she was leading us on walks, she was walking us 100%.
Right.
She was good sometimes walking next to us, but anytime she saw anything she wanted to go after, that was it. I was being told. And she was like a great dog, and then there were these couple things that were just making us kind of crazy. And at this point, we still hadn't seen her with other dogs, so we actually got your information from Downtown Dog Rescue, from Lori and one of the volunteers there, Debbie. And they said, you have to have her go to Brandon to get evaluated because he will put her with other dogs. He'll see how she, what her natural tendencies are, and it's invaluable. And we kind of dragged our feet a little bit, and the last straw, I guess you could say, is when we took her to the obedience class, and she just went absolutely crazy the moment we walked in, and she saw other dogs and was really close to them and barking and whining, and they put a gentle leader on her muzzle and trying to get her calmed down with that, and none of it worked. She was still barking and whining when we walked out of the training room.
What did you feel? What did you feel when that happened?
Oh man, it was we had already gone through some of like the embarrassed feelings of when you're on a walk and your dog freaks out over another dog. And the other owners look at you like, hello, can't you control the 40-pound dog you're walking? But she, we just felt really badly for her because we knew that there was something else going on that we weren't addressing correctly.
Now, you're married.
She was obviously agitated, obviously stressed out. So.
Yeah, and you're married, so you and your husband, are you both having the same problem, or was it different with him than it was with you?
Oh yeah, no, the walking and everything was all the same. We we had definitely both coddled her from the beginning when she was sick, and just in general we thought that was the way to to go about being good dog owners, because that's what we used to do with our dogs growing up. So I since I don't have such a long time with you today, so all I can say is that from the time that we said, all right, this is like the last straw, and we got in touch with you, something changed in our thinking, because we started saying like, okay, this is obviously not the right way to be, leading this dog.
Yeah.
And we had bought into the pack mentality of, we need to be her leader, but we both sat there going, we are so not her leaders.
Your husband said something funny when he walked into my office. He said he's listened to the program before, and he sat back and he says, wait a minute, this guy has either got the biggest scam in LA, well, what the heck is going on? He says, I had to come and see myself. Do you remember him saying that?
Yeah, he did. And, we sat there for a while thinking, I'm a student, he's a teacher, and I'm a graduate student. We're like, well, we're a one-income family. We decided that spending the money to have you look at her and help us figure out exactly how to be her leader, that means 15 plus years of happy life with this dog.
Right.
And that was ultimately what got us over that skepticism of, like, really, can she spend one day at this guy's place and then come home, and if we change some of the things that we do, can we really just change our whole life with her? And it sounds goofy when you're listening to it, and then it's one of those things where when you see it happen, you can't help but believe it. It's after we took her to you last Saturday, she was obviously really tired from being around all the dogs all day and playing all day. But since then, it really is like having a different dog in our house.
And I want to quickly say to our listeners, look, we get a lot of dogs that come out of the shelter like this. Not just your dog; they can come from breeders. Doesn't matter. Where the reactivity of the nervous system is very high. And the stress of being on a leash and a collar can create aggression. That's where aggression comes from. It's stress, generally the stress that we put on them. And so when you get the reactivity of the nervous system at such a level and you're trying to introduce one dog to another, there's an explosion that takes place that puts fear in the owner's heart, And the key is that we don't know how to socialize. You cannot train this behavior out of the dog. You have to have extreme socialization. And so when I put her with my dogs, she had that explosive energy, which I allow for that to take place because my belief is that we have to flow with energy rather than restrict it. Okay? And so you saw a dog that, if you really look at that, and those can go to the website and look on the YouTube videos, you will see a dog that literally has a permanent smile on her face. Could you see that?
Oh, yeah. She was absolutely incredibly happy to be running with those dogs and just being able to be around them and to finally be off leash and play with other dogs. It was like definitely the happiest day that she's had probably since we adopted her.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and even with all those dogs, the energy at which she was flipping around. If you go to the YouTube, you'll see your dog just flipping and flipping and flipping and turning. That's genetic. Now, when I talk about learned behaviors and genetic behavior, that is a genetic behavior. But on a scale of 1 to 10, if we were to look at 10 being worse, where does your dog exist on that scale? And so let's say your dog is a 5. Anything over 5 is a learned behavior. So when we're evaluating a dog, they come in, I evaluate them to see if this is a learned or genetic. We can see that your dog has a genetic predisposition to be hyper, okay? And we have to allow that to take place so that we can actually gauge where she really is on that scale. And then from there, I can teach you how to cope with that. And that's where we are right now with you and your dog. And that's why it may still be a little difficult for you to walk her when she sees other dogs because she hasn't fully gotten over, okay, that's another dog, and this is what we do with dogs. She's only been with me one time. But without other dogs around, how is she on the leash walking? Is she doing good?
Oh, she's fabulous. We said when we brought her home, we were like, this is like walking a different dog, like one that we sent away to boot camp and it came back and and she was totally trained already. Yeah. There's still moments when she'll, like you said, she goes after another dog, but it's not the same as it was before.
Right.
She doesn't go to drag me across the street if she sees another dog. She starts to pull a little, and I keep walking, and we get her focused back on me, and we get her to walk behind us again, and then she's fine. And it's wonderful. It's going back to a time where it's like, those first few days when she was sick and walked outside with us for a couple blocks and walked behind us or next to us or whatever. It's back to that where we're not walking in the morning now because we need to tire the dog out.
Right.
Like, we're walking in the morning so she and I can get exercise.
Exactly. She's
and
following
just be
you.
outside and bond.
Yeah, she's following you. When you
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Right.
She's following us now.
When you became the leader, you and your husband became the leader, that's really what this is about. You can actually see that relationship transform into something that you hoped would be when you originally took that dog out of the shelter. And this is so important for our listeners to hear because we don't have much time. I mean, dogs are dying at an alarming rate, and we need some information that's going to be effective today, not next week, next month. It has to happen for us now. And that's the reason I wanted you on the show, because other people that are listening, they need to know that this is not going to take a long time. If it's taking a long time, then it's training. And that's not what this show is all about. This show is about advanced socialization. And so I'm so happy that you were able to come on today to express to our listeners that they don't have to turn their dogs back into the shelter. They don't have to give up on their dogs. Dogs don't have to die like they're dying because of aggression. Aggression is something that we never looked at in a way that made the owners successful. And we need to know, again, I can't say this enough, aggression is the highest form of communication. It is brought on through stress, and it's the stress that we generally put on our dogs. And I think you know that now with just one visit.
Oh, yeah, and just to throw in there, too, that it's not just on walks that she's totally changed now. She really is different in the house, and there have been no furniture leaping contests since we took her back from you. There's been no. I think she may have jumped over the back of the couch once, but we stopped her pretty fast that time. Right. So there hasn't been anything. And when she starts to react to something and we immediately stop it, she immediately stops now.
Good.
And that was not happening before. She seems really happy and very calm now inside the apartment, and it really is almost like we took home a different dog.
Oh,
so
that's great.
But she's wonderful, and that wonderful dog that we had before that, we were so excited to spend time with and do all the things like you talk about, like take her to a sidewalk cafe and sit outside. She's totally on her way to being fully able to do that.
There we go. Allie, wonderful. I'm so happy. I'm so happy you came to me, and we're not done yet. This is just one visit, and you're already miles beyond, I mean, you guys are really doing it. And so I hope to see you again soon, and Maggie, and set up some play dates.
Yeah, she'll be with you tomorrow.
Oh, so really? Okay. Well, Leroy will be happy to see her. He likes your dog. He made that comment to me that he really likes your dog.
Yeah, good.
So we'll see you tomorrow. Okay.
All right.
Thank you very
so much,
Alan.
Brandon.
You're very welcome. Okay.
Bye.
Well, today is a very special day for me, and I hope for our listeners. For the first time, we have someone that's in the studio on the Fouché Way radio show. This is the first time, and I'm very happy to have her here because she drove all the way from Boulder, Colorado with her dog Jorah. And if you were to go to our Facebook page, you'll see videos of Jorah. We did a lot of things today. This is very interesting because I normally don't do all these things that we're going to talk about today, but because this person made this drive, 18 hours, 18 hours of driving to come and get some help for her aggressive dog. Say hello to our listeners and tell them who you are. And
Hi there, I'm Martine Rudy, and I've known Brandon for about 5 years now. And so I just knew that this was time where I wanted to have all of the pieces in place to where I could have this wonderful relationship, and I knew that he had the answers and the way that he could help me to shift so that I could have this amazing relationship, which I have today.
Good. And we don't just have this meeting. I have known you now for, what has it been, 5 years,
5 years
now.
Yeah.
And we originally met on the phone.
Yes.
Was it?
Yes.
In fact, that's...
Yes.
Yeah, that was it.
So, do you want me to tell what happened?
Yeah, because your daughter's involved with
Yep.
it. Okay.
I have a wonderful daughter who you actually mentored and helped to be in a part of this process.
You give her a name.
Before, Milena.
Milena, okay.
Yeah.
Tell our listeners the story about your dog and how you came to know me.
So we were living in Northern California, in Petaluma, and I turned to my daughter and I said, let's get a dog, and she wanted a dog. So we looked on what we found a site, a rescue site, and we saw a picture of her and fell in love with it, this one dog. So they held her, we drove down, picked her up, brought her back, and like Maggie, she had kennel cough.
Mm-hmm.
She was quite sick. So we had her, and I think we had her for 2 weeks
Mm-hmm.
of dealing with her being sick, and we had 2 cats at the time, and she seemed like she wanted to eat both of the cats, and every dog that she saw, she was extremely agitated. When
Now, was this after the sickness?
Yeah, when she started to come out of the
There we
sickness,
go. Mm-hmm.
she started to show this behavior. So we hired some trainers.
Mm-hmm.
I think we went through 3 trainers, and it seemed as if it was getting worse. Everything was just getting worse. And so we called the rescue and said we were thinking we may have to return her. And one of the volunteers there said, no, you have to talk to Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a hold of you, and you did a phone consultation.
Mm-hmm.
And that day we were talking in regards to our cats,
Mm-hmm.
and you had explained that everything we were doing was making it worse.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a reason why she was acting this way, and there was a very easy way to deal with it,
Mm-hmm.
which for us, after what we had been through for 2 weeks, seemed unbelievable.
Yeah.
But we were willing to go for it.
Right.
So went ahead, and what you told us at that time was to actually go out and get a prong collar,
Mm-hmm.
which we were going to be using to help her and put the cats in the crate.
Mm-hmm.
So we drove to the feed store, picked it up, and we were putting it on in the back of the car, and someone walked by with a dog, and Jorah went and lunged at the dog and bit my daughter's arm.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of a turning point where it was like, okay, now just tell us, what do we need to do? But that was also the beginning of her actually being the one who was taking on a lot of this.
Yeah.
And my dog is loyal to me. So that was kind of an interesting relationship that was going on there.
Yeah. You just said something there that takes me back that we have to go back to talk about, which is the prong collar, because, I talk against those things now. And there's a reason for that. I think this was 5 years ago when we actually talked with your daughter. And, even when I told you to get that collar at that time, I said, look, there's going to be a change coming, and the things that you do today are not the things that you're going to be doing later. You're going to have to make a conscious shift. Now, it's important that I'm bringing this up with our listeners because we have to change at some point in our life and become better at doing something than we were before. I'm along with that too, okay? But I'm looking at the different relationships between you, your dog, and your daughter. There are 3 different personalities that are there. Your daughter, being young, needs something that she can do physically to make her confident about herself. You've gone through things in your life. You're not looking to be that dominant individual. You're looking for something more to what you do for a living, which is the concept of yoga, right? Mm-hmm. So that energy is different.
Yeah.
Okay? And so it's important when you say, or when I say I was different then, but I'm different because I see what needs to take place for the people that I'm talking to, the mindset.
Yeah.
And at that time, I wanted to be close to what was popular and to show people how to use that. Sometimes I think back and say, maybe I shouldn't have held back with what I know now, But we all change. But I was really trying to let you know, even at that time, that this was something that your daughter needed.
Yeah.
Okay? And that she was going to have to change. But she was very successful with using this.
Extremely.
Right.
Yeah.
There is an old saying, all stick and no carrot, and that's got to change. And she actually ran into the stick herself when your dog bit her.
Yeah.
And that changed her too. Can you talk about that emotionally?
How she felt about it?
Right.
Well, it was her turning point of saying, Brandon, tell me what to do because I need to know that this dog is going to listen to me. Mm-hmm. I need to have this relationship. Mm-hmm. So she stepped it up into, talking to you all the time and finding out all the bits and pieces of how to do that. Mm-hmm. As it turned out, Jorah was amazing and would listen, could be off leash, everything. Mm-hmm. And so you want me to jump ahead to?
Yeah, go
Okay,
ahead.
so we're, speaking of change, it's like we lived together, single moms. The two of us were together for, those 4 or 5 years. And then, I guess 4 years. And then a year ago, she moved out. And that's where everything changed. That's where it became a relationship to where Jorah needed something different from me. And I, at that moment, actually started traveling, went and lived in Arizona for a while, had a different lifestyle. And I started compensating for this kind of living in a condo and the kind of lifestyle I had. I felt bad for her. And so instead of being more of an alpha and taking that role, I actually did the opposite. I started really spoiling her and really having a relationship that was kind of unpredictable and inconsistent in a certain amount of ways. So what happened is she started to become unsocialized, and she started to be aggressive again. And she went back to that point where every single dog we saw, she went after.
And that's because of your lifestyle change.
It was lifestyle change,
Right.
and she was confused, and I got really confused. So I tried to kind of use some of the pieces of what I'd learned, because I had all those years of watching you and watching Milena, and it just wasn't working. And so that's when finally I decided, I'm not feeling the freedom that I need, and I'll have to give this dog up, even after having her 5 years, because, she's literally taking dogs down, and I'm feeling nervous all the time. And that was the big thing, is I physically and emotionally would feel nervous every time that she went towards a dog. And so I said, I'm just going to come down here. I'm going to drive down, and I've been here a week, and it's been incredible.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about this week with you being here.
Yeah.
Because it is very interesting, and you got a first-hand look at everything that you were feeling afraid of.
Yeah.
I was very clear with tell me what your fears are, because with knowing what you fear and how to handle that fear is what's going to get you the success that you need to have with your dog.
Yeah.
So first step, put her with dogs, right?
Yeah.
How'd you feel when you saw that?
Felt incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she was relaxed. She was happy. She wasn't interacting, which I thought was interesting, but she was just, she has a tendency to get really, active and animated.
Right.
And she was super mellow. She just looked like she was calm. But I also like the fact that first day you assessed her too. You took a day and you spent time with her. So I was going to use that information, find out what did you know about this dog that maybe I couldn't see, because I really wanted to have this great relationship.
Right.
And you gave me some information that was fantastic.
Let's tell them.
Sure. Some of it was, I thought this was fascinating. You said she's a dog that tolerates other dogs. And what she used to do is play with dogs when she was, at one point when she wasn't aggressive, in between. And she'd play with dogs, but she'd always play really rough. And so we had to stop her from playing with dogs, because it wasn't okay, and there was no dog that she could play with in a healthy way. So when you said that she tolerated dogs, it just gave me this understanding of a different dog.
Right.
So that's really been the process for me, is just getting to know who is she, kind of starting over fresh.
Right.
Even after 5 years.
Yes. And every dog is different, right? So when we talk about a dog tolerating, that's exactly what I'm saying, the toleration. The reason that they tolerate is because they don't have the need to find out where they fit in the pack. So when you see two dogs, what we call playing, P-L-A-Y, it's really two dogs trying to determine who is more dominant than the other without actually fighting. So it's not really playing.
Yeah.
They're trying to figure out from a hierarchy standpoint where they fit in.
Yeah.
Okay? So if your dog is a tolerator, here's the downside to that. They always look for a reason. Give me a reason to be aggressive, or give me a reason to follow you. And that's why the owner has to be the leader, to be able to see that, to step in and show where everyone belongs.
Yeah.
That's the only problem with a tolerator, And you saw from her that she was enjoying it as long as she was able to tolerate.
Yeah.
No one's putting pressure on her. She's staying out of trouble, staying out of the way.
Yeah, she even disappeared and went into the pool for a minute. She went and got some water and came back. She was just comfortable.
And the good thing about her going into the pool is because she likes water.
She does.
So when dogs do things like that you know that they enjoy, then they feel comfortable in their surroundings.
Yeah.
This is all part of the assessment.
Yeah.
That's why it's important to have your dog evaluated to find out how much of this is genetic and how much of it is learned. So in your case, with your dog, genetically, she has a genetic predisposition to be a tolerator. That means she's not an alpha or a beta, you know? She's just existing within the moment. And she's the kind of dog that will say, well, if you attack me, then I will respond, and that will become the learned behavior, that I will react every time I see you like that. Or if you allow for me to exist and nothing happens to me that's negative, then this is where I will live, in my mind, emotionally, hormonally. And that's what you see with her. And so everything else outside of that is a learned behavior. And this is where you come in.
Exactly.
Yeah, how you affect her life.
Yeah.
The reality that you create for her. And so you saw that with the other dogs, and then the next step was to see her at the dog park.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about that?
I felt amazing. I mean, again, it's like going past my belief system. It's shifting my belief system because I'm thinking she can't do this. You know,
Right.
I've already seen her. And, you know, you wanted to see what she was like without me.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I came, she changed a little, but she didn't change a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a little bit of kind of animated. And we hadn't seen each other for, I think it was a couple of days at that point, too.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, it's freedom. It's like finding a way of knowing that your dog is able to interact and, you know, be social
Mm-hmm.
and do the things. You know, I've kept her from everything for a year, basically.
whole year.
Whole year. I just stopped all those things.
Mm-hmm. How's that affecting your life, though?
Oh, seriously affecting it. You know,
I mean, in which way? I mean, there's a lot of listeners here that are actually, they have jurors there at home.
Yeah.
You know, so tell us.
Well, I live in Boulder, Colorado, which is an amazing place. You can go hiking, you know, 5 minutes away. You're in a beautiful place to go hiking.
Mm-hmm.
So because I wasn't comfortable with her on a leash around other dogs, I couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had her off leash, I didn't have enough control.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't able to take walks anymore. So I stopped hiking, which is something that's really important to me.
Sure.
Didn't go to dog parks. Just figured I wasn't going to be able to. I was kind of shocked. That was a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
But just in general, I'd walk out the door and immediately, you know, there was a dog next door. We moved to a new house,
Mm-hmm.
and she hadn't been running the fence in the backyard at all, so I thought everything would be fine. And we introduced him, and she took it down. The first thing she did was just take the dog down.
Mm.
So it's like I'm in this neighborhood where there's people walking all the time and dogs, and it's very family oriented. And I have this dog that to me feels like she can't be there.
Right.
But I also can't take her up to the mountains because I don't have a way to be comfortable with her either. So it got to where it was just a kind of lose-lose situation.
Right.
And, you know, I think it's fantastic to have a dog and be able to be out in the world.
Yeah. We went to a very wonderful place, too, here in Hollywood called Runyon Canyon.
Yeah.
And that's going to be pretty close to where you're living now.
Exactly.
So how did you feel about that? I mean, what did you expect? Because we want to talk about a few things that happened there that.
Well, these were like brand new moments for me because we get out of the car and I'm walking her and I'm walking past dogs and
Right.
you're showing me how to do that, and then we take her off leash, and you know, it's like just learning about who she is off leash, letting her go ahead and come back. And what I found is that she was really interested in knowing where I was.
Mm-hmm.
So it became important for me to keep walking, but then she would pay attention. She interacted with a ton of dogs.
Right. Well, you know, it's really important, too, because the way that we interact is setting up the relationship, right?
Yeah.
And at one point, she pulled over to the side to do her business, and you stopped and you waited for her.
I did.
Right?
I did.
And what did I tell you?
You keep walking.
Keep walking.
Yeah.
And you keep walking because you're setting a mindset. You're saying, I want you to continue to round me up.
Yeah.
But if you show her that you're waiting on her, then you're giving her the power.
Yeah.
And when they have the power, they do things that you do when you have power.
Exactly.
You regulate, right?
Yeah.
So that's huge for you. Now, I remember when we were halfway up at the point where you take the leash off the dog, there was a dog at the water hole. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And you didn't say anything, but on the way down, you said to me, if you weren't here, do you think I would have been able to do that? And I told you, well, what are you asking me for? Ask yourself.
Yeah.
Would you? You probably would have been a problem, right? I mean, what I'm saying is, was it really important for me to be there?
For me, actually, it still was because I've been in a process daily with you of just working through this.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it was a great it's great to kind of watch how I've reacted and to see how many patterns I've had.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll jump ahead to the next day where we did the dog park, and then I took her in one time by myself, and that was great. And Leroy was on the other side, but I still didn't feel like it was me. So that next day after we did the canyon, I actually went to a park by myself, and I took her there. You weren't telling me to do that, but I just opened the door and let her in, and that was a turning point for me, because I realized that if something happened, I could totally deal with it. And that was part of what my issue was, is I wasn't willing to take the ownership to that degree.
Yeah.
I was doing what you said. It's like you set them up to fail and give them the room.
Right.
I couldn't do that because I had too much fear. But by walking through that gate and letting her be out there, she was wonderful. She was great. Everything was wonderful. But I had to actually experience that moment on my own to know that I could do it.
Right.
And so that was a breakthrough. And then since then, another one is walking on leash.
Which is a big one.
A huge one.
I can't tell you how many dogs are returned to the shelter because they can't walk properly on the leash, And I remember after we had did every single thing that you thought you wanted to do, that you had fear, you kept thinking of new stuff to do, and I had to tell you, wait a minute, look, let me tell you what's important for you. Walk that dog on the leash properly. Establish the relationship properly. And it's interesting because you knew that that was the area where you were weak, but you were avoiding it. Let's talk about that. I mean, what were you thinking?
I was thinking that it was one of the areas I had tried a lot to do on my own before I came to you, and even since we've been here.
Right.
I just kept trying because she always walked ahead. So now what she was doing was walking out to the side and still trying to get ahead, and I just felt like I wanted her right behind me. And was it yesterday? She just, all of a sudden, I just, let her know that was what I wanted. It was clear communication, and she went right behind me and followed exactly where I went. People were doing things around me. She didn't pay any notice.
You mean when you stepped up to become a leader?
Yeah.
Now this is really important because in your mind, this is what you want, right? But at the same time, you're fighting it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're fighting the fact that you have to come out of your comfort zone to be something that your dog needs you to be.
Absolutely.
17 hours of driving, and you're avoiding that with me.
It was the piece that it was just us. It was the piece where it was that new relationship, and I had my own fears. I had fears that somehow, I didn't know that it would feel as good as it did when the relationship changed. There was a part of me that felt as, because I had been giving her love all the time, and I really had to change my mindset. I really had to shift into something to where it was about, this is clearly what I need, and I'm just going to do it. But before then, I hadn't made the commitment.
Right. I think when I told you that although we did all the things that you thought you wanted to do, that none of this was going to make sense and none of this was going to last until you were able to get that walk straight.
Yeah.
I think that's when you changed.
Yeah.
Because I told you, no, you take your dog to that hotel room with you.
Yeah.
And I want you to go outside, and I just want you to walk. Not around the block or up to the corner, but just straight walking.
Yeah.
Just like a homeless person would do with their dog. Just moving. Right?
Right.
And to get that connection, and then call me after you've done it.
Yeah.
I think knowing that your time was almost up here, and that you're going to have to go back home, and then I told you that none of this was going to work if you couldn't get that together.
Yeah.
I think that's when you did it.
I would say yes, and the combination of the dog park on my own.
Yeah.
Doing something where you weren't there, Leroy wasn't there. I was totally responsible and willing to step it up. That's really what it's about.
Yeah. And our listeners need to know that. You can't half step with this thing. I mean, if you want to help a dog that is aggressive, you've got to be as sober as the judge. The truth that you're standing on has to be firm.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that I get a lot of people that talk to me, and Leroy said the other day, I was actually talking to you, he says, man, you got to pull it out of them. All that talking, you got to make them say what's happening. Because, even though this is about dogs, right? This is about people. This is about us. This is about me. This is about helping ourselves, to become truthful with ourselves. I believe that our dogs are a roadmap to make us better people. But if we can't be truthful with who we are, then we're going to have problems solving that with our dogs. And, it's something funny Leroy said after you left, and I'm just going to say it here, I don't know how you're going to feel about it, but, I talk to a lot of people. And sometimes, not too many times that I talk in metaphors, but I kind of try to let you figure it out yourself. And I said something to you. You were sitting on my couch, and someone knocked at the door, and Jorah went ballistic, barking. And I said, usually when dogs act like this, they tend to have this passive-aggressive attitude. And this attitude is generally learned from their owners, who they live with. And I remember you sat there and you looked for a moment and you said, I'm not passive-aggressive. And I said, hey, I didn't say that you were passive-aggressive. I just said that usually this is what happens. And you sat there for a minute, and I think we started talking about something else, and you stood up right in the middle of the floor, and you said, I used to be passive-aggressive. My father and my mom were passive-aggressive, right? This is important, A lot of times I'm able to see what's going on at home because the dog tells me.
Yeah.
That's why I call this a relationship.
Absolutely.
It's an emotional, hormonal thing that's happening that if you see it enough, that's why I call my place One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because you see all of the problems that come in, and if you're able to look at the 1,000 dogs that come in to do things 1,000 ways the same way, and then you can connect it to something else and get people to verify, yeah, that was right, then that becomes a formula. That's the Fouché way. And so when I'm talking to you about Jorah, I was talking about you.
Absolutely.
But you had to admit that.
Well, and I'll take it one step farther because I had driving like that, and I'm going to be doing it tomorrow going back home, is a really intense drive. I was so committed and so clear. You had already started working with me on the phone, and it wasn't fulfilling me to the degree that I needed, so I was willing to come here. And I knew that it was me. I knew it. I've already seen what Jorah could do before, so I knew what was happening. So when you said that, I went home and I researched it, and I found out that the opposite of passive-aggressive is clear, assertive communication. And I decided that I've been giving my dog mixed messages, and that, who I am in my life as a yoga entrepreneur and everything I do, it's not about that. And so this is about me because I'm stepping into more leadership in my life right now, and so this aligns up with everything I'm doing.
Right.
So when you said that, I trust you and care about what you say enough that I really thought, okay, so that's where it changed when I got Jorah to walk behind me. I finally gave her clear, assertive communication, and for whatever reason, and I don't even care, I wasn't willing to go there before that minute. And so it was, when I think about what it was doing to her and how I was the one that was making her attack other dogs or be the way she was being, it was enough for me to say, okay, I'll drive down here, I'll find out what it is, and sure enough, she's in a different place, I'm in a different place, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I also want to make sure we share about the horse too, because that was pretty incredible.
Oh, go ahead, sure. Yeah, I mean, I did that for you, so
yeah,
you can tell the listeners, sure.
Well, there's this great YouTube video that Brandon took of Jorah being introduced to a horse. She's had this high animation. She gets to a 10 easily around horses. And so he just did a really beautiful introduction. We did it, but a beautiful introduction to where she got to become extremely calm and, again, get clear communication about what was going on. And it was just another piece of seeing her a way that she could, not be confused and just be relaxed in her body, be relaxed in herself, which is important.
Yeah, I want to, now that you mentioned that, I want to explain what was happening there. When we're trying to introduce dogs to different creatures, this is communication. This is extreme socialization. We're trying to socialize them with creatures that are different from themselves, but not so much different. It is just the concept of predator-prey. And when I saw that Jorah was trying to communicate with the horse from the rear end, she's trying to produce the prey mentality. So if we're going to introduce her to horses, then we have to do it where we set her up to fail. So we want her to be introduced to the head, to the front of the horse, right? Because we want the horse to be able to communicate to your dog who I am. And so when the horse reached down to discipline her, and when I say discipline, it's a discipline because of the rate at which he lowers his head, right? And when that happens and your dog backs away, there's a lesson that's learned there, right?
Yeah.
That I'm not prey, right?
Yeah.
And so we allow this to happen a few times to the point where the horse becomes emboldened enough to be more assertive with its behavior to cause more of a prey mentality within your dog, right? So the horse becomes the predator and the dog becomes the prey, and that becomes the relationship. So then, once we've established that, I told you to let the dog go. Let's see how much she's learned that lesson, right?
Yeah.
And so she still tried to go around to the rear end of the horse, but because she wasn't first introduced that way, she came around to the front because that's what she knows. And what did the horse do?
Nipped at her.
He nipped at her.
Yeah.
And what did she do?
She went out.
Exactly.
She came back in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he disciplined her and dominated her 3 or 4 times. But what was happening when that takes place is that's a challenge. That's why I always say we can't challenge our dogs. So the challenge wasn't enough for her. She needed more. So that's when I said, this is where you step in to become verbal. And so at a distance, I verbally controlled her, and then that was it.
That was it.
She got it. So what I was doing was actually helping the horse to teach the lesson to the dog that I'm not prey. Okay?
Yeah.
That's what that was all about. Now, what was really interesting about that is you told me a story about how you allowed for her.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, when we first moved to Colorado, we lived next to a herd of cows, and so we allowed her to herd them one time just to see if, she could do it, and she was amazing. And so that's where she really got excited about cows, and ever since then, it was horses and cows.
That's interesting. You said she was amazing. She was amazing at being a predator to create this problem for me, right? We all do this. And look, this is the reason this show is here, to bring forth the truth, okay?
Yep.
When we play predatory games with our dogs, and then this thing comes back to bite us, and then we say, I don't know how this happened, right?
Yeah.
That's my job. My job is to tell you how this happens,
Yeah.
so that we learn to socialize properly. If we had socialized her in this way before, she would have been fine with horses, So it's the predatory games that we do, because that's all we've ever known how to do.
Well, I'll also say that somewhere people were saying she's a shepherd and she needs a job. I've heard that a lot. She needs a job. And so you're talking again about the physical, having to get them exercise or whatever, give them focus. So that's a whole mindset of thinking that I was helping her. So I actually called around to try and find places where she could herd more often. I did, because I thought that was when she was her happiest.
Bank robbers have jobs too. It's not a healthy job. Gets you in a lot of trouble. So we want to talk about, not today, but we want to talk about things like this, on how to set our dogs up to fail, to give them good jobs, to help them succeed so that we can live successfully with them. We're going to have a new understanding, a new concept, a new way of life, a new reality that we create for them through connecting to them emotionally, hormonally, okay? And this is where you are now. I'm so happy that you came down. I can't wait to get the progress on her, because she's just been doing amazing.
Yep.
And I think that you and I will talk more too, because I want to teach you how to mentally drain your dog and not physically drain. Yeah. Exercise is very overrated the way that we've been taught, and I think you're learning that now. And before we leave, I want you to say one very, very important thing as far as love and affection. You have not been as neurotic with that love and affection and touching. And how does that feel? Because a lot of people have problems with that.
Yeah, well, that's a great thing. I think I can actually count that I've pet her 4 or 5 times since I was here, and that over a week, and it feels fantastic. I feel closer to her than I have before.
Right, so you're not losing anything.
No, I'm not losing anything, but I was giving her a lot of love and a lot of pets.
How much would you touch her? Just how much?
Every day. Every day.
I mean, every day, yeah, but how much?
Jorah's a big dog, and she'd come over, and she'd come to you to be pet. So now I also don't pet her unless I call her to me. So that's the only time I've done it is when she comes. So it's a very different relationship.
That's good. And doing that, that's part of the Fouché way. You're going to see a different relationship along with everything else that you're doing.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Brandon.
You are so welcome. And thank you for listening. And we will see you next Thursday on the Fouché Way radio show.
You're listening to Fouché Way with Brandon Fouché, right here on